Hello, I'm back with another build. I know this is very late into the mod, but I just recently, yesterday, rebuilt my Bard Healer after about a 4 to 5 mod hiatus from it because of the game lag was just too unbearable for me to continue playing it, so I stripped it, but I built it back since the game seems to be running smooth now. And so I'll just show off what I'm working with. So this is very similar to, I mean, it's almost identical to what my Warlock healer has. Except the only main difference is using um, I'm using the Wood Elf race instead of like a Drow or Minzo Baranzan Drow, simply because I play DPS on this character too, so I don't want to play a Drow on a DPS. But I'll just show the gear and where it comes from. So of course 5% outgoing healing and power comes from the second boss of MLMD, and then the debuff chestplate, that one you can upgrade in the campaign for Minzo Brandon and Demon Web Pits. And then the maximum performance, that one comes from the new dungeon, the first boss MDS. I'm using the Solarium weapons. Of course you can switch these out for Mastercraft um, or Weavers, or the Void Touched. Those are probably like the 4 options to use. I'm just using Solariums most of the time because I'm not that worried about 2% extra damage. It's just an option, you know, what you want to use. So for the boots, these are also from the first boss MDS. It just gives performance regeneration, and it's very easy to stack up because each time you proc it, I don't think it can proc multiple times if you hit multiple people with a heal on the same tick, but it gives you 2 stacks every single time it procs for some reason, so you can get to 5 stacks in like, you know, two seconds probably. So it's very easy to proc that 25%. Neck and waist, I'm using Jewel the Merilith. You could switch this out for the Vistani set as well. But Merilith you can keep up pretty well, at least during artifact calls. And then we're using same rings as my Warlock. I'm using this one from the new dungeon MDS for that 4% power, and then it has pretty good ratings as well. And then also that 5% outgoing healing ring for the high outgoing healing rating as well. And you could, if you wanted, switch out probably this ring and use the Grace ring, this one. But the problem is it doesn't proc in a lot of the new content, so that's why I'm currently not using it. If I was doing like a specific speedrun and, you know, Demon Web Pits or Tom or something, then I would pop that on, or maybe MGR as well. But general content, I don't run it much anymore. It's just like for specialized content, I guess. And then of course we have the outgoing healing shirt. That's 7.5% outgoing healing. There's 2 versions of this. Make sure you have the crit strike rating one, because the other one is defense rating and we don't really want that. We have these pants, the 9% crit severity pants. These give 1000 crit severity rating, but if you want better ratings, then you can get the legendary version that drops in ADS. I'll just show that real quick. This one, so it gives 2000 crit strike and 1000 crit severity rating, and it's, you know, 250 less item level, but it's the same exact bonus. So that just gives better ratings, which is why that's technically better. But if you can get the ratings while using this one, which I did, so then, you know, it's not a big deal. Artifacts, primary is almost always the Zealous Blast Scepter, and then the other ones are just for stats, so I just use these 2 for the higher item level and the power and forte, and then also the Marilith Masks to complete the set bonus. Enchantments, these are all just for stats. This bottom one, that's Power Crit Strike. Jade, make sure you have that for the Alchemy Healing rating. And then I'm just using all of these for, I could probably switch this out to defense maybe. And then I'm using Lightning Flash. Of course, if you want to cheese it, you can use that stupid Divine Aegis thing, which I haven't claimed on this character, but I don't like it. I really don't like the way it's bugged, so I'm just going to continue using the Lightning Flash, because I just really don't like that bug for it. We have the movement speed bonus. Of course, if you want, you could use AP gain, but the Bard doesn't really need AP gain, so I just always have movement speed on. I use maximum hit points. You could use AP gain here as well if you wanted, but also crit strike. If you only play healer, it's not a big deal to use these, but if you play multiple DPS tunes and healers and stuff, then you might not want to waste this 5% crit strike on a healer, because they are expensive. Let's look at boons. So healers don't really have that many good boons, but obviously we have power, we have crit strike and crit severity, we have hit points down the middle, and then movement speed. And then for our tier 5s, we have Forte and Outgoing Healing. If you have extra points, just put them in action point gain. And then you want to get definitely these two on the right, Blessed Resilience and Advantage. And then get Enhanced Application, just for a little bit extra survivability, but it won't proc that much because it's only a 5% chance, and the Bard's at-wills are pretty slow. The Bard heal at-wills, I should say. There's not really any other Master Boons I would consider, so just these three pretty much. And then with extra points, I'd probably go into Recharge Speed maybe, and then just go in like Awareness and Defense and Fiends. I mean, I have 21 points I haven't spent yet, but these are the main ones you want to look at getting, in my opinion. We just go for stats, so power and then defense and utility. I almost always use just movement speed to get around faster, but you could use Revive Sickness if you're completing harder content where you might die in. Companions, currently summoned, I have Portobello of course, but you can switch that to any support companion. So we've got Flapjack, Tutor, Spine Devil, Drist, and Scorpion if no DPS has it. And those are the main ones in a dungeon that you'll have. Between Drist or Spine Devil, but the other 4 that I listed are the main primary ones. And then for our equipment, I have the Forte Outgoing Healing ones, just like my Warlock Healer. Dulled Senses for the enhancement. You could also switch this over to, Armor Break or Vulnerability. Those are the 3 ones that are good. Blurred Vision is not good. That's accuracy. Which one is it? Slowed Reactions. Slowed Reactions is not good because it doesn't actually help your team at all, because they should be capped on accuracy to negate deflect anyway. And then for our companions, we have the Raptor, the Golden Billet Pup, the Proud Pink Yeti, Black Dragon Insight, or Black Dragon Ion Stone for the crit strike, and the Alpha Compy. The only difference in companions from this to my Warlock is I'm using the Wolf instead of this, and that's just because it's a Forte difference. The Warlock has crit strike Forte, and the Bard has crit severity Forte, so it's just kind of an easy swap out. And of course the Wolf is also really rare and expensive to get. Mounts, I'm using the Mystic Aura most of the time. Of course you can switch that to any aura. I'm using Combat Power, the Necrotic Roar. This is the new Undead Lion that came out a couple weeks ago. It's just slightly better because it gives 1% extra damage to the team, but it's nothing to write home about. And for here, I'm using literally the exact same insignias and bonuses as my Warlock. So 2 Menders, 1 Guardian Spirit just for survivability. I mean, you could switch this out for something support based if you wanted to. The new Cautious Devotion one and Trainer's Restoration. I'm not sure if I talked about in the little Warlock Healer update video I did a couple days ago, but Cautious Devotion is a terrible tooltip and works incorrect to what it says. Basically, the way that it works is when you're at full health, you gain up to 5% outgoing healing rating based off of your item level. So if you're 100k item level, then you will gain 5,000 outgoing healing rating. If you're 50k item level, then you'll gain 2,500 outgoing healing rating. And it seems to give you those 5 stacks when you get to full health in just about 1 to 2 seconds. And then you seem to lose the health, or you lose the stats when you drop below full health. But there's like a buffer, like a 1 second or so, 1 to 2 second buffer before it loses those. So it's fairly consistent with keeping those bonuses. And obviously this is based off of being at full AP, but AP is situational for all healers, so it's gonna be up more often than not, depending on what content you're running. Well, now I'll just go ahead and show my stats and show what I'm working with. So I'll just buff up real quick. So we use Flask of Potency, Squash Soup if you want to use Squash Soup. I know it's a little bit more expensive. And then we use the 4,000 Outgoing Healing Guild Food and Wildstorm Elixir. And obviously the Forger's Box. So for my stats, power rating is going to be capped with a Runic Aura. But if the tank doesn't have a Runic Aura or whatever, I'm not going to complain about it. So with Runic Aura, I'll just add up the stats and kind of show you what I'm looking at. With Runic Aura, I'm at 81% power, and then I gain about like 3% from this, so that's about 84, and then I gain 5% from this, so that's about 89, and then what the heck? Oh yeah, and then the Master Boon I gain 6% more, so that's about 95. And of course the Raptor puts me up by another 18%. And so I think all told, I think I'm sitting at about 116 to 17% power, if I'm not mistaken. I think I added everything up. I can't find where I'm missing that percentage, but whatever. Crit Strike, I think I gained 2% Crit Strike from the Forger's Box I just used, but without that I'm sitting at 75%, so it's 85% with Lightning Flash procced. And Lightning Flash is really easy to proc on the Bard heal. You don't even have to hit the enemy. You can just proc it when you enter performance mode, so. Crit Severity. It says I'm at 100.5% right now, but that should be 101%. I'm not sure where that 0.5% is missing. Of course, I could put 1 point from Charisma into Dex, but I had the rating the other day, so I'm sure it will change at some point. But basically, that crit severity goes up by 10% from when you play a song that's not in a quick play slot, which I'll get into the mechanics of the Bard Healer in a little bit. So you gain 10% from that, which is always up, that's 100% uptime, and then you gain the extra 9% from the pants. So that's, I don't know how often it would proc for yourself on a Bard Healer, but it's, you know, probably like 60 to 80% uptime, anywhere from there. And then for our outgoing healing, we're at 94.5% right now. We gain 5% from the helmet, plus another 10% from the ring and the shirt. So that puts you up to 110%. And then you also gain an extra 5% from this class feature. When you play a song in combat, your healing bonus, it says healing bonus, but it actually gives you outgoing healing. So that puts you up to 115% alchemy healing. And then if you want to look at overall alchemy healing, you get 6% extra from these weapons because they give overall alchemy healing. And then you also gain an additional 10% overall alchemy healing from a bard mechanic. When you play a song in combat, not in a quick play slot, you gain 10% healing bonus, and so that's overall alchemy healing. So with that extra, so that'll put you up to like 130% overall alchemy healing almost, I would think. So it's pretty crazy. So now I will go over the mechanics of the Bard Healer. So I'll just show what I'm using first and explain why I use them. So our Arpeggio is our kind of on-hand tank healer at will, or possibly you might use it for a DPS here and there, but I would probably just heal the DPS with one of the songs, which I'll get into a little bit, but this is mostly reserved for the tank. And the first feat ties into that, so it's actually 500 magnitude for the first tick of it, and then it decreases, but it resets after 5 seconds. But I think it stays at 500 magnitude, at least according to the tooltip, but it's not something you would use very often. It's just kind of like, you know, sometimes the tank might take a big hit and you don't have to use the Defender's Minuet song for 2000 heal magnitude. You can just hit them with Arpeggio real quick, put them back up to full health if they're at like, you know, 60% or something. Phantasmal Concerto is our main at-will thing to proc your debuff bonuses and stuff, as well as it is very strong at giving you AP back depending on how many enemies you're hitting with it, which I will show after I go over the rest of the powers. So for our powers, we have Flourish. This will just increase the healing capability of the next song by 30%. It only lasts for 4 seconds, but you usually proc it instantly and then you play the song that you want it to apply to, which the only song that you would generally apply it to is Rejuvenating Carol, because that's your heal over time, so it will give that bonus for the entire duration of the heal over time for the 30 seconds. And then we have Delayed Play. I'll explain that in a little bit and the mechanics behind it, so I'll just skip that for now. But Baseline is your main on-hand performance regenerator. You can get up to like an extra fifth of your performance back if you channel it for the full 10 seconds, but most of the time you don't get the full 10 seconds. You'll probably get like on average 4 to 5 seconds to channel it, because you have to go back to healing people, because you have to hold it down for 10 seconds and you can't do anything in that time, and you walk at a very reduced speed, as it says in the tooltip there. And I'll just show you what that looks like. So this is how slow it is, and you can see how long it takes for it to fully go. So I would generally, and if you don't channel it for the full timer, then the cooldown that just went off will be a lower amount. So if you only channel it for half the time, then it will presumably only have a 11-second cooldown. So that helps a little bit with it. So I would generally try to spam this whenever you're not having to do anything else. Even if you're at like 80% performance, it's still a good practice to try to keep as high performance as possible, because there's a lot of downtime in fights where you're not having to constantly heal and everything. But you don't necessarily have to use this if people aren't taking very much damage. I'll get into the dailies later, but for our songs, two of them are situational, and one of them is not really ever used much at all. Well, the other three are the primary ones you want to use. So the ones that you want to try to have up all the time is Blaze Flamenco, Rejuvenating Carol, and Sheltering Etude. So Blaze Flamenco will give you give your whole team a 2% damage bonus, and that's not really the main benefit of it. It's the Storyteller bonus, which I'll talk about later. So Rejuvenating Carol gives that 200 heal magnitude over time for 30 seconds, and then Sheltering Etude will give you the 600 heal magnitude when people drop below 50% health, and it stays for 60 seconds, so it's like an instant safety net. They drop below 50%, they get a 600 heal magnitude, which is probably equal to about 500k or 600k, so it should get them to 100% health or very close to it at least. And another thing to note about this is if they already have Sheltering Etude applied to them because they haven't dropped below 50% health and you play the song again, then it will give them that 600 heal magnitude when you play it. So it will actually cleanse the previous one and give them the benefit of it, and then reapply the song again. So that's very nice. So the other songs, Defender's Minuet, this is one of the ones I have in quick play. It's more of like an instant, quick thing that you want to use on a tank or a DPS if they drop really low. So it's more of a reactionary thing. That's the reason why it's in quick play, and you can't really play that song quick enough for you to not have it in quick play for the purpose that it has because of that 2000 heal magnitude. Warding Carol is another situational one, which is why I have it in quick play as well. It continually removes negative effects, so it's basically a cleanse that lasts for 10 seconds, and I think it cleanses once every 1 second or maybe once every 2 seconds. I think it's once every 1 second. So it's very strong in the last boss of Demon Web Pits, where people get presumably the tank will get the poison tick on them, and it hits very hard, so it's good to cleanse that. And also in places like MGR, you might be able to cleanse the purple and the fired dots that people sometimes get on them. And Tiamat at the very beginning during the Severin phase, it's very good for too. Aurora Fantasia is a heal over time when you attack, and it heals nearby allies, but it's a very big performance drain, so I don't recommend using this one. It's a decent heal over time when you're attacking, so it's decent to add to Rejuvenating Carol if you're doing like a heal check or something, but it's not really a viable song to play right now, so I wouldn't recommend it. I already talked about this one for that 5% outgoing healing bonus, but the other one is Vamos Allah, which makes it to where when you have the Blaze Flamenco song, it will give your team a 10% speed bonus, movement speed bonus, and if you are outside of combat, it's a 20% speed bonus, which is really good for dungeons. So now let's talk about the feats. So we use Diminuendo like I talked about earlier. It's basically just has it to where that at will is 500 magnitude, because you're never going to be channeling it for more than half a second. You're always just going to tap it on the person that you want to use it on, which is generally the tank, like I said. And then the second feat is really useless, so we just go for Rhapsody of Arms for that extra potential 3% DR that you can get with it. And then we use Vamp for this one, and this will benefit delayed play, which, like I said, I'll talk about in a second. Basically, when you play a song in combat, well, I'll just talk about delayed play right now. So basically, you click delayed play, and then you play a song, and then that delayed play icon in the bottom of your screen will be taken up by the song that you play. And it will... Delayed play, it says it lasts for 12 seconds, but obviously, once again, you basically use it and you play the song and you store it. So that 12 seconds doesn't really matter. It could be a 2-second timer and that'd be fine. But for Vamp, essentially when you play a song, you have a 1/5 chance of you gaining Vamp, which when you use Delayed Play, it will not clear the song out of your thing. So Delayed Play is essentially a performance saver, and it's also like an emergency heal. So generally what you want to put in Delayed Play, which I'll just show you use Delayed Play, generally what you want to put in there is Sheltering Etude. So you see I played it and it didn't actually give me any benefit of that song, but it's down there in the bottom right now, as you can see. And if I use it, then it clears that song out, and then Delayed Play is back to normal. So the reason why Delayed Play is good to use is because of that effect of Vamp, which makes it to where you pretty much only want to use Delayed Play when Vamp procs, otherwise you just play the songs as normal. And unfortunately Vamp only lasts for 20 seconds, so you might not always have a need for it when it procs, but it's still a much better option than anything else. If you're running something easy, then you can also run Dancing Lights possibly instead of Delayed Play because of the mitigation. So I would only run that in places like Tom's, Aerial, and MGR. And if you don't have a Bard DPS, which these don't stack together, the Bard DPS would be using Dancing Lights, so there would be no reason to use it. But I wouldn't use Dancing Lights in MGR because it's difficult enough to warrant Delayed Play. The fourth feat, I was using Pianissimo for the longest time, but I've gone ahead and switched over to Desperate Finale. This will basically, it has a 6-minute cooldown for it, and it basically, when you drop below 1/5 of your performance gauge, it will restore 600 performance immediately. So it's basically, Pianissimo is like a constant help, but you have songs that have less potency, and Desperate Finale is just like a once in a while help. So don't spam all your songs all the time, but it helps for like really heavy heal checks or something that you might have to do. And then the big one, the reason why people run Bard Heal in the first place. When you play a song not in a quick play slot, you give Storyteller's Boon to party members within 50 feet, and it stacks up to 3 times, and it varies on their roll. So tanks get up to 15% damage resistance. DPS, the main one, give 15% extra damage dealt, and healers get 15% outgoing healing. So with a Bard heal, you can technically undercap your outgoing healing by 15%. I think it's outgoing healing and it's not overall outgoing healing, but I could be wrong. One problem is this doesn't actually grant the bonus to yourself. So as a Bard healer, you don't get the 15% outgoing healing, unfortunately, which is why you can't take into consideration that when you're adding up your stats. But that's the main reason why we use Blaze Flamenco, because it's the only song that lasts for longer than 10 seconds. I guess besides Aurora Fantasia, but it's the only like easy to play song that's reliable. So with that 2% bonus plus this, that's 7% just from Blaze Flamenco that you get. And then of course we try to have always Rejuvenating Carol and Sheltering Etude up, and those are the 3 songs that you want to have up. The other 2 that I mentioned, these 2 are situational, like I said before. Of course, there's the 10% crit severity that I was talking about, which is why we can cap crit severity. And then we have this one for that 10% overall outgoing healing bonus, like I said. So now I'll talk about the dailies, like I said before. So Inspiration is basically just a 25% damage bonus for the nearest person. It also gives CC immunity, so it's good for certain fights, but it's a situational one. And I probably wouldn't use this one in trials just because there's enough DPS. It's hard to, know who to put it on, and it's hard to actually target it on the correct person because it only applies to the closest player. So you could easily use it on a healer by accident, or the lowest DPS for that matter. So Curtain Call is the main one that I use most of the time. Even in dungeons, a lot of the time I only use Curtain Call. So it cancels all of your song effects and gives bonuses based on the songs canceled. And it cancels them off of the player. So if the player has already used the effect of Sheltering Etude because they drop below 50% health and you haven't reapplied it to them yet, then they don't get the bonus of Sheltering Etude. So I'll just explain those bonuses. So Blaze Flamenco will give 10% AP back, so that's probably one of the strongest effects it gives. And then Rejuvenating Carol gives that 800 magnitude heal instantly. Warding Carol gives a 10% damage resistance bonus, so that's good for mitigation checks. And of course, Warding Carol is the the cleansing song, like I mentioned before. And then that lasts for 10 seconds, like it says. And then Sheltering Etude is the other really strong effect that it gives. It gives that 800 magnitude shield for 20 seconds, which, based on my experience, that 800 magnitude shield is probably about, of a DPS, it's probably about 60 to 80% of their maximum hit points as a shield, so it's very strong. And that's pretty much everything. I will mention, when you're using Curtain Call, unless you're using it for mitigation, if you're like in a dungeon or something, the best way that I've found to use Curtain Call is to use it right before your Blaze Flamenco and Rejuvenating Carol songs are going to run out, because they only have about a 30-second cooldown. Blaze is 36, and Rejuvenating is 30 seconds. So it's good practice to use Curtain Call right before they run out, because you're going to have to replay them anyway, so that's that. So now I'll just show how Phantasmal Concerto works as well, like I mentioned before. So we have a pack of mobs here, and I will just play those 3 songs so you can see how Curtain Call works. And you saw I got that vamp effect. You see how it's highlighted down there. So we can play Curtain Call real quick, and then use vamp, and then replay our other songs, and you see vamp procced again, so I'm getting lucky with that. So you also get AP back when you play songs. You see I'm already at about almost 20% probably, but the more targets you hit with this Phantasmal Concerto at will, the more AP you will gain back. So just look how fast it fills with just 5 enemies. You get it back in like, what, 5 seconds? 5 or 6 seconds from 0 AP, so it's really strong. But I don't really have anything else to say. I think that mechanic rundown was sufficient, so Blaze Flamenco, Rejuvenating Carol, and Sheltering Etude, always want to have those up. Sheltering Etude is your main bread and butter heal that you want to reproc in order to give people big heals. And I mean, that's pretty much everything. So I hope this video helped, and leave any comments if you have any questions. So thanks for watching.